When police entered the house, they were confronted with a horrifying sight unlike anything they had seen before. The stench was overwhelming. The body of a young woman had literally sunk into the couch, her flesh rotting down to the bone while she was still alive. Lacey Ellen Fletcher, born in 1985 in the small town of Slaughter, Louisiana, lived in a tight-knit community near Baton Rouge, where everyone knew each other. In such small towns, life is often quiet, but this case brought infamy to the town. Lacey was the only child of Sheila and Clay Fletcher. Diagnosed with autism as a child, Lacey experienced the world differently from others. She struggled with focus and social interactions, challenges that became more pronounced as she grew older. School was difficult for her, and she had few friends. Despite these struggles, Lacey was known as kind, cheerful, and full of life. She loved sports and enjoyed spending time outdoors near her home. Her parents were respected members of the community. Sheila had worked as an assistant district attorney and later as an assistant mayor, while Clay was involved in nonprofit work, helping others. They were active in their church and seen as upstanding citizens. No one could have anticipated the tragedy that unfolded in their family. At 2:30 a.m. on January 3, 2022, Sheila called 911 to report that her daughter wasn't breathing. When police and paramedics arrived, they discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. Lacey's lifeless body was found on a leather couch, nearly naked. Her torso had sunk into the couch, surrounded by filth, including feces, urine, maggots, and insects. Her body was covered in red sores and ulcers, with flesh rotted down to the bone. She was slumped on her left side, her right arm resting near her neck, her eyes and mouth wide open. Her legs were crossed beneath her. The smell was unbearable, and the sight was deeply disturbing. According to the coroner, this was the most horrifying case he had ever encountered. He admitted that it left him unable to eat or sleep for days. Lacey's father displayed no emotion, while her mother attempted to feign remorse and wept during questioning. The couch was positioned against the wall, with a gray dresser on the right side, neatly stacked with folded clothes. In front of the couch was a cluttered black table covered in lotion bottles, talcum powder, wet wipes, nasal spray, and other items. A box of DVDs was nearby, suggesting Lacey had watched movies. Rodent droppings were also found near the couch. Naturally, investigators' first question was why Lacey's parents, seemingly decent and respectable people, allowed such conditions to develop. How could they live with her in such filth and squalor? Lacey weighed only 66 pounds at the time of her death, at 36 years old. An autopsy revealed she had been confined to the couch for approximately 12 years. Her skin on her back and buttocks had blackened, indicating severe neglect. Although she tested positive for COVID-19, it was not the cause of death. The coroner determined the cause of death to be gross medical neglect, leading to malnutrition, starvation, immobility, severe ulcers, and osteomyelitis. A necrotic infection in her bones triggered sepsis. Her death was ruled a homicide. It is believed Lacey passed away 24 to 48 hours before the 911 call was made. According to Lacey's parents, they had gone on a weekend trip just days before her death and found her body upon returning home. They claimed Lacey's autism had worsened over time, developing into Asperger's syndrome after 9th grade, which they said forced them to isolate her. At that point, she transitioned to homeschooling. Neighbors reported they hadn't seen Lacey in 15 years. Some newer residents didn't even know the Fletchers had a daughter. When asked about Lacey, her parents told acquaintances that she was ill and unable to leave the house. They alleged she suffered from locked-in syndrome, a rare and severe neurological condition causing total muscle paralysis except for eye movements. Patients with this condition are bedridden, dependent on caregivers, and can communicate only through eye movements. However, there was no mention of such a diagnosis in Lacey's medical records, and it remains unclear who, if anyone, diagnosed her. The last time Lacey saw a doctor was at age 16, during high school. At the time, she reported anxiety and was officially diagnosed with autism. There is no documentation explaining why or how she became paralyzed. The Fletcher family led a reclusive lifestyle, rarely socializing or having visitors over the years. As a result, no one had any insight into Lacey's condition. After her death, Sheila posted on social media, writing, "Mom and Dad love you so much." On May 2, 2022, 64-year-old Sheila and 65-year-old Clay Fletcher were arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Both denied responsibility, claiming that Lacey, as an adult, had made her own choices. They argued they were powerless to intervene and insisted that their daughter had chosen to live as a recluse, confined to the couch. They said she preferred not to use the bathroom, opting instead to relieve herself on a towel beside the couch, which they would clean. According to them, Lacey never complained or indicated she was in distress, so they never sought medical help. Sheila claimed she had been helping treat her daughter's skin ulcers. These explanations seemed implausible. Lacey was severely emaciated, starved to death, and ultimately succumbed to sepsis. Initially, the Fletchers claimed Lacey was paralyzed, but later they suggested her condition was voluntary. Over 12 years, as their daughter deteriorated before their eyes, they took no action. Now, they asserted she had neither been ill nor required care. It also raised suspicion that Lacey's death coincided with their vacation. Did they leave after she died, or did they abandon her while she was already in critical condition? Notably, the parents had never once sought medical assistance for Lacey. Just 2 days after their arrest, on May 4, 2022, Sheila and Clay were released from jail on $300,000 bail each. The decision sparked widespread controversy. According to the district attorney, the Fletchers had no prior criminal history and posed minimal flight risk, justifying their release while awaiting trial. Sheila and Clay portrayed themselves as grieving parents mourning their daughter, but the public was not convinced. Locals expressed outrage at the neglect Lacey endured and the apparent indifference of her parents. The couple's attorney released a statement saying, they do not wish to relive the pain of losing their child through media scrutiny and will not give interviews. They have endured immense emotional pain over the years. Anyone who has lost a child knows this pain. But can their grief be compared to other parents who lose children? Many argued that Lacey's death was preventable. Her parents could have sought medical help, but they seemingly lacked the willingness to do so. The prosecutor classified Lacey's death as murder and demanded a thorough investigation by law enforcement, citing severe neglect as the direct cause of her death. The case now hinges on how it will be officially charged, as involuntary manslaughter, negligent homicide, or second-degree murder. Involuntary manslaughter carries a maximum penalty of 5 years, negligent homicide up to 40 years, and second-degree murder is punishable by life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The prosecutor announced his intent to push for second-degree murder charges, emphasizing the parents' failure to fulfill their basic duties. Lacey's parents were her primary caregivers and had an obligation to help her. We don't treat animals this way. If a pet were in such a condition, we would take it to a vet. But this was a human being, their daughter. The prosecutor stated firmly. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this case in the comments below.